for this, these people in this cultural setup. And at one of these programs, there was one man, he kept trying to reach up and touch their feet or touch their sari. And they kept, receding, but he was very persistent. And at one point, he made himself so obnoxious that Prabhupada became angry. We were all standing up and dancing at this point, and the kirtan was going on. And Prabhupada, he was kind of observing this going on. And suddenly he showed his anger. He became very angry. He took his kartals, and he ran towards that man and started, trying to hit him with the kartals. So Prabhupada was just so beyond all the stereotyped and caricatured image of the sadhu, and that was really nice to see that. In Surat also, in the morning, Prabhupada would chant his rounds. There was like a concrete walkway outside our bungalows, back and forth, and the sun would be shining, would be kind of brisk. And I would walk with him. One morning, walking back and forth, chanting, he just stopped. And he pointed at the sun. He said, the yogis travel on sunbeams. And so he said, I know, because I have experimented in Hamburg. And then that's all he said, and that was it. In London, Himavati, she was a very good cook. So when Prabhupada came to London on one occasion with Shruti Kirti told her, you shouldn't cook very much because Prabhupada's not feeling well, he hasn't been eating much. She said, okay. Anyway, she goes and cooks an entire feast and brings it and leaves it with Prabhupada. She comes back and she sees practically everything is gone. She said, but Prabhupada, they said you ate everything. They said you were not feeling well and you're not eating. He said, no, they just don't know how to cook. In Mayapur, on a morning walk, and you've probably seen this in the transcript, but Prabhupada was talking about the coming war, because there was a time where everyone was concerned about war coming. And in the course of that walk, I asked Prabhupada, I said, Prabhupada, what should we do to prepare for the war? He said, chant Hare Krishna. I said, that's all? He said, prepare to chant Hare Krishna. In Montreal, which is where I was trained up by Kirtanananda, when Prabhupada finally came there, we had, where he was sitting, we placed the Jagannath deities next to him. And they were just small deities. But Himavati had made the outfits for them, and she was a very good seamstress. She was very talented in that way. So at one point, Prabhupada, he reached over and picked one up. And he started to examine the sewing work on the dresses and the turbans, very deliberately, just turning it. And then he asked who did this, and of course someone said, "Oh, well, Himavati." And he said to her, he said, "You can become self-realized just by sewing." So she replied, "Well, yes, Prabhupada, but I want a sewing machine, but Hansaduta won't buy me one." Because it was $300. She wanted the best one. And that was a lot of money. So he said, "Oh, no, you must have a sewing machine. You must have the best." So she was, of course, grinning from ear to ear. I said, "Yes, Prabhupada." And so that was in Montreal also, of course, on Sunday when the feast was cooked, Prabhupada always received the first plate, right? And I was very much into cooking because I was trained up as a cook in the Navy. And my family, my father, he was a chef, and my whole family, they were hotel, restaurant people. So when I came and joined, Kirtananda was going to teach Himavati to cook. I said, "No, you have to teach me to cook. If you don't teach me, I'm leaving." Of course, I wouldn't have left, but I just wanted to learn, and it was really a very exciting thing for me to see and to learn the different techniques and the different preparations and so forth, spices. So this one occasion, it might have been a Janmashtami, it was a big feast, and after the program was finished, we were walking from Prabhupada's Vyasasan, which was quite a distance from the door because it was a big bowling alley. And I was walking next to him, and Prabhupada stopped suddenly and he turned to me and said, "Your sweet balls are very good." And I got kind of like heady. He said, "But mine were better." In Bombay, this was also on our first trip to India, we were all crammed into Akashganga. And the devotees were sick, and toilets didn't work, and the water didn't come on. It was very hot and very uncomfortable. Anyway, so Himavati, every now and then she needed something, and of course we had no money because we were just traveling with Prabhupada. So one day I decided I got to ask Prabhupada what to do because I didn't know how to solve this problem. I said, "Prabhupada, I'm a householder, but I'm traveling with you preaching, and every now and then Himavati needs something, but I don't have any money, and it's very embarrassing." Prabhupada said, "Yes, a householder life is embarrassing." So I said, "But what do I do?" He said, "What can be done? By hook or crook, get money." But Prabhupada didn't say, "Well, here's $20. And he said, "Yes, it is embarrassing. That's what it is." So once taking a train with Prabhupada, and there might have been 3 or 4 devotees with us, and someone had given Prabhupada a pot of sweet balls. So just before the train took off, Prabhupada opened those sweet balls up and he started to give them out. He took one, then he started. And so one devotee, he said, "Prabhupada, are those offered?" He said, "Oh, you don't have to have any." You don't have to have any. Another funny thing in connection with sweet balls, that in the early days, Kirtananda was always trying to impose austerities on everyone. That was his mode at 26 2nd Avenue. And every Sunday, of course, they cooked a lot of sweet balls and there'd be a lot left over. And the routine was that at breakfast time, you got those sweet balls with your cereal, which generally was farina. Drop them in the hot farina. It was really very, delightful thing to have for breakfast. But Kirtananda insisted that we can't have more than 2. So it became an issue at Ishtagoshti, and we discuss it and haggle over it. But it couldn't be resolved, so finally it came to Prabhupada's attention. Everybody assembled, and it was laid out before Prabhupada. So Prabhupada said, "Yes. So everyone can have as many sweet balls as they like, but Kirtananda can only have 2. So that was his sense of humor. I asked Prabhupada once, is it possible that a devotee, instead of having a relationship in Shantaras, Dasya, or rather a relationship where he goes back to Godhead and he has a relationship with Krishna, which we read about in our books, is it possible that a devotee might have a relationship where he doesn't go back to Godhead, but he just preaches? His relationship with Krishna is preaching. And before I could finish, Prabhupada said yes. He said the acharyas never go back to Godhead. He said they remain in the material world, they travel from one planet to another, and they preach Krishna consciousness. So I said, well, does that mean because the acharya is a pure devotee, that although he's in the material world preaching, he's simultaneously in the spiritual world, so it doesn't make any difference? Prabhupada said yes, something like that. And another time he said Hitler was a Shaktavish avatar. I said, a Shaktavish avatar? Yes, he said. He said Shaktavish avatar means one who descends with special power, who is empowered to do something. It doesn't mean Shaktavishavita doesn't mean he always does good, but he may also do destructive things. Because I was German, so maybe that's why these things were triggered off, because sometimes he would say, he told me that the Germans were very fond of Vedic culture. And in fact that the Germans were the greatest Sanskrit scholars in the world, even greater than the Indians. And that the Germans had come to India and stolen certain technical manuscripts, Vedic manuscripts, how to make rockets, and he said that's how they developed the U-2 rocket. In the early days when Prabhupada wanted to impress his audience about the importance of Bhagavad Gita, he would mention that Emerson read Bhagavad Gita and Thoreau read Bhagavad Gita, and inevitably he'd mention even Hitler read Bhagavad Gita, till someone told him, but Prabhupada, in this country, he's not very popular. Of course, Prabhupada pointed out, but in India, he's considered to be a hero, because